I'm Tom Clark with Tom Clark Solutions. It's halftime. We are finally 60 days beyond the start of the Nevada legislature. We've got a little less or a little more than 50 days left. But a big part of what is the state legislature during this 120 days are the deadlines that we see throughout the process. We just passed one of the biggest deadlines that we have at the beginning of the session, and that is that the bill, if it's an assembly bill, it has to be out of the Assembly Committee of Origin. Same thing on the Senate side. So on Friday, by midnight, all of the bills had to stay alive by being amended and passed out of their respective committees. The reason that's so important is that throughout the legislative process, once a bill is first introduced, that time frame for the initial hearings and the initial changes and amendments is the most important time, because once the bill passes out of committee, and if it succeeds on the floor, whether it be in the Senate or the Assembly, and then passes over to the second house. So your Assembly bill goes from AB 5 or whatever the number happens to be, gets to committee, passes on the House, goes over to the Senate. You would think because of the deliberation that has already taken place in the House of Origin, there won't be as much deliberation of the bill in that second house. Now, that of course isn't always true. So what we're waiting for now is a big hurdle that's coming on the 20th. And for that deadline, the bills have to have come out of committee and then pass the floor of either the Assembly or the Senate. Now, what's interesting this legislative session, because of the pandemic, because the Legislative Counsel Bureau, which is really the heartbeat of this entire process, the guys and gals that draft the bills, write the amendments, they're pretty far behind. These folks have been working from home. They've been dealing with the same challenges that all of us have been dealing with. And at the same time, they're dealing with these deadlines. So a lot of the bills that were passed out on Friday came out with conceptual amendments. And what that basically means is that it's the concept, it's the idea. Change this particular Assembly bill or this particular Senate bill so that it does these things without actually seeing a line-by-line alteration or amendment to the bill. That's called the mock-up. The mock-up amendments really tell us that the intent of all of the testimony, the intent of the changes that are being made to the bill are done so in a way. Once the bill, now the next step for that particular piece of legislation is that it gets its first reprint. That's the adoption and a reprint of the bill with all of the intended amendments. Then it goes to the second reading on the floor, and then it gets passed out on the floor. That first reprint is really, really important to us because it reflects exactly what those changes were in the Committee of Origin. So where we're at right now, we're waiting for those first reprints. We're waiting for that second reading on the floor of the Assembly. And there is opportunity between the second reading and what's called general file, where they actually vote on the bill on the floor. That bill can be amended again if necessary. So Tuesday's the next big deadline. All of those bills have to be passed out of their House of Origin. So if the Assembly bills got to be passed out of the Assembly, Senate bills have to be passed out of the Senate. So there's other really good news. They're finally going to let us into the legislative building. The Legislative Counsel Bureau has put together a process, and the leadership has adopted the process. And it's very confusing, but basically, in essence, if you're vaccinated or if you do a same-day test and you're negative, then you can schedule appointments with legislators. So the way that the process will work is if I want to meet with a particular legislator about a particular bill, I can go online, fill out the request to have a meeting with that legislator. That request is then supported by the legislator. I demonstrate that I've either been vaccinated or that outside of the legislative building, they'll actually have rapid testing. So we can actually do same-day testing if it's necessary. The Tom Clark Solutions team has all been vaccinated, so we are ready to go. And we can make those appointments and go in and see those individual legislators. Also, for committee hearings, they're going to start allowing the public and others to come in by appointment. So if you have a particular piece of legislation that you've been following or that you've been working on and you want to testify in person in committee, they have a process now through the legislative website for you to go on, sign in, much like you did previously to testify by phone, and they will grant you permission to go to the building and have access, go to the committee hearing, do your testimony, do what you need to do, and then you can leave. So it's a baby step, but it's a positive step. I know we're more than halfway through this legislative system, and it's hopefully we can get in and make some kind of impact, but it's just refreshing to know that we can get in the building.